Cześć, z tej strony Adam Zemełka, a Ty słuchasz właśnie podcastu Psychologii w Praktyce, specjalistycznego czasopisma dla psychologów, psychoterapeutów i studentów kierunków psychologicznych. Dzięki, że jesteś. Dzień dobry Państwu, witam serdecznie w podcaście magazynu Psychologia w Praktyce. Ja nazywam się Adam Zemełka, a moim i przede wszystkim Państwa gościem jest dziś postać niezwykła. Gościmy pana Jona Fredericksona, autora wielu książek, w tym książki, którą mam tu dziś ze sobą dzięki współpracy z wydawnictwem W Drodze. Książka pod tytułem Kłamstwa, którymi żyjemy. Pan Jon Frederickson to amerykański psychoterapeuta z ponad 25-letnim doświadczeniem. Jest członkiem kadry naukowej Waszyngtońskiej Szkoły Psychiatrii. Jest także założycielem Instytutu Intensywnej, Krótkoterminowej psychoterapii dynamicznej, kierownikiem programu szkolenia w zakresie ISTDP w Washington School of Psychiatry oraz programu szkolenia podstawowego w norweskim towarzystwie ISTDP. Jest także członkiem włoskiego stowarzyszenia doświadczalnej terapii dynamicznej w Treviso oraz naszego polskiego laboratorium psychoedukacji w Warszawie. Wykłady i prelekcje głosił w Stanach Zjednoczonych, a także w wielu krajach na świecie, w tym w Danii, Francji, Holandii, Norwegii, Szwecji, Wielkiej Brytanii, we Włoszech, w Polsce oraz Libanie, czyli rzeczywiście na wielu kontynentach i ma na swoim koncie co najmniej 6 książek, a może i więcej. Hello, Dr. Frederickson. It's nice to having you today.
Well, thank you for having me.
So, sir, firstly, do you like House MD TV show?
Oh, yes, that's a great show.
And I think you know why I'm asking, because the mantra of Dr. Gregory House was everybody lies.
Mm-hmm.
Do you agree with Gregory House?
Well, all of us lie to avoid the pain in our lives. The problem with House is that while he's a truth teller, he has no empathy for people to whom he's telling the truth. So, and he has no empathy for the fact that everyone is going to lie to avoid the pain in their lives. So he's interesting in a sense that he tells the truth, and of course he's brilliant according to the show, but the way he tells the truth is cruel. And as a psychotherapist, we know, going back to Plato, that truth is the food of the soul. But the problem is that while the truth heals, it really hurts initially.
Yeah.
So we have to have empathy with the fact that patients lie, because defenses are just the lies we tell ourselves to avoid the pain in our life. So when we tell the truth to a patient, we have to have compassion for the pain that's leading them to make the lie. That people aren't evil because they're trying to avoid pain. It's just like usually they're suffering a kind of pain that's too much to bear by themselves.
So in your
they need to
opinion,
lie about it.
Yes, please, sir, go ahead.
So in psychotherapy, right, we're trying to help patients face together what they couldn't face alone.
So in your opinion, Dr. Gregory House couldn't be a psychotherapist without empathy, without compassion?
No, he would just be psychologically cruel.
Yeah.
It's you. So that's what's kind of fascinating to people is like, how can this guy be so insightful in one way and yet care so little about the pain that's inflicted? That would be a very anti-therapeutic approach.
Do you consider empathy and compassion as main features of psychotherapists, or maybe something else?
Well, there's several things that go together. I mean, truth is what is the food of the soul. So we have to tell the truth, but we also have to have empathy for the person to whom we're speaking. How will they hear this? How can we make it possible for them to hear this? How can they hear this in a way that they don't feel attacked? How can they feel this in a way that they know we understand their pain and understand why avoiding that particular pain was understandable? One of the things we oftentimes say is, yes, this way you avoid your feelings or avoid a truth. It sounds like it saved your life as a child,
Mm,
but it sounds like it's destroying your life today.
mm.
You had to do this in the past because you were dealing with this alone. Can we join forces together so that together we can help you face what was impossible to face in the past?
Yes, and that's a compassion in nutshell, I would say. Uh, Irvin Yalom said that after over 60 years of conducting psychotherapy, the main lesson is that people are much more unhappy than we think. And secondly, that there is no such figure like an adult person. So, sir, would you agree with Yalom? And the second question, what is your own, the main lesson from your own experience as a psychotherapist?
Well, let's start with the word compassion. It comes from the Latin, which means to suffer with.
Yeah.
So, as a therapist, you have to be able to feel some of that patient's pain and their suffering, so they can tell from the way you speak and the words you use, they know that you understand them, and not just understand with the head, right? But from the heart. Um, you know, Heidegger had a great way of talking about this. He said, understanding is that you stand under something much larger.
Mhm.
There's a funny story of an analyst who was an analysis, and so his analyst made some interpretation,
Yeah.
and then in the patient role, the patient said, "Oh, now I understand," and the analyst said, "I was afraid of that," because so much of what we call understanding is really overstanding, looking down on someone else rather than feeling with,
Mhm.
in terms of compassion. Then going on to Yalom's point, I think it's a little more complex. We're always adults and we're always children. That there's a complexity here.
So we have
There's a
our
complex.
own inner child, yeah.
You could call it that way. It's but we're always adults, and we also have sore spots.
Mhm.
If we had a critical father, if
Yeah.
someone happens to criticize what we do, we're going to have an exaggerated reaction because we're not just reacting to that person's criticism. It's like they've touched a wound of someone criticizing us. If we had a disrespectful or domineering parent, we'll have a sore spot when it comes to dealing with an authority.
Mhm.
So
So
I think about it in terms of sore spots. Someone touches you in the right area, you're going to flinch, and it's it's going to come out of our mouth or a reaction in some way. And that's true for all of us. We have these little sore spots that can get touched.
yes, and we have our own very individual experience when we talk about our childhood. So
Yeah.
when we think about psychotherapy, should
Hmm.
it be something like tailored, so very adjustment to the concrete specific people that should be personalized for any patient and to be well something an opposite to the general assumption that there are panaceum or something like that what works anywhere everywhere and for everyone.
Yeah. Well, when you have a panacea that supposedly works with everyone, you're really talking about magic.
Yeah.
And look, we all wish there was magic. We all wish there were easy answers. We all wish there were simple solutions that work with everyone. I live in a country where that happens to be very popular today. And so it's quite human for us to wish for easy answers, simplifying answers, right? But these are fantasies. They're very popular lies, because the reality is things are always usually complex. They take a lot of thought. They take sensitivity. And every person knows this in the sense if they go to a therapist, the last thing they want to feel is that they're on some production line and someone is just saying the same thing they say to everyone else. I mean, they're just going to feel like I'm being treated like a thing rather than a person. And in that sense, yes, in the field, there will always be people who offer simplistic answers as a way to avoid the hard work of understanding someone, to avoid the complexity of life.
Yeah.
And so whether it's in politics or in therapy or any other field, there are always people who offer false simplicity and panaceas rather than in any field of work. It's very complex. Someone could think, oh, it's very simple for Adam to sit here and chat with people. They have no idea of what the subtle interviewing skills are that an interviewer has to have, right? So oftentimes from the outside, things seem very simple. And everyone who's listening here can realize, not just anyone can do any of your jobs. There's complexities, there's experience, there's subtlety, there's thought that's involved. And that's never more clear than in psychotherapy, where no matter what kind of treatment you're doing, it always has to be tailored to the unique patient. What does it need to look like? And that's why when I show videos of my work, it can be confusing to people because it's not the same with everybody. As soon as we see someone whose work is the same with everyone, I don't think we're seeing psychotherapy, actually. We're seeing ritualism.
Hmm.
We're
And
seeing ritual. Like there's a ritual, it's just being done with everyone. But that's not the genuine, spontaneous dialogue that good psychotherapy needs to be.
yeah, it's mechanical, yes, something like
Yes, yes. And
physically.
there's always a wish to reduce the unpredictability of the living person to some mechanical
Mhm.
set of interventions and reduce a patient to a mechanism whom
Yeah.
you can treat in a mechanical way. And of course, if you try to do that with a patient, patients are gonna hate it, and rightfully so.
So, did you experience something like that, that your patient uh, expected from you, being a wizard, a magician who will take off his pain and relieve him immediately?
Actually, that's the case I'm presenting in Warsaw in a couple of days.
Wow.
A fascinating example, a man who had a really grandiose idea that this session with me should be able to be like the greatest session ever, and he
Because
should
you are
have,
popular, so you have
yeah,
to be
exactly.
distinguished.
So he had a really grandiose idea about me, but even so, he also had a grandiose expectation of himself that he should not be who he was. He should live up to some impossible expectation. And so I was having to point out to him, right, well, it's one thing if you expect me to be God, but in a certain way, he was expecting himself to be Jesus Christ. Now, this is a guy who had had some psychotic breaks.
Mm,
And he'd been in a hospital where several people thought they were Jesus Christ.
mm.
So, so that was the delusion or hallucination. But in practical terms, he thought it wasn't enough to be him.
All right. But do you
He should be
feel that,
he should
yeah?
be some exalted version. And as we kept working on that in our relationship, this impossible demand on himself, an impossible demand on me, then we began to learn about the impossible demands that his father had placed on himself. And so it gave him tremendous relief
Mhm.
as we helped him let go of this impossible demand from himself, from life, from me, and from others.
But do you think sometimes the power of authority and expert can be healing in some way? For
Um,
example, by the suggestions or, recipe for for happy life.
right. Um, well, we know from Williams James' book, The Varieties of Human Experience, he was very respectful of this. He'd talk about how people would attend some religious event
Mhm.
and there would be some overwhelming experience with a charismatic leader
Yeah.
that would lead to permanent change. So we know that there are isolated instances where that can happen. Um, the problem is, as therapists, though, is that when someone comes to us for this, they're oftentimes enacting an authoritarian relationship
Mhm.
where they're turning to an authority, and then if they submit in the right way to the authority, something magical is going to happen. And so oftentimes afterwards, they'll feel quite thrilled that they were with some authoritarian figure. But the problem is they learn to submit better.
Right.
So, in a way, their character pattern and their habit of submitting becomes worse, and it creates problems throughout their life. So, in psychotherapy, as far back as Freud said this is a really big problem.
Mhm.
Therapists need to avoid this.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, some therapists still fall into that and they enact that authoritarian position. And you do have patients coming thinking, well, if I just submit to the right authority, that then, even though my authority father or my authority mother didn't heal me, maybe if I submit to the right way to the new authority, I'll get a different result. So, as therapists, we have to be very mindful of these authoritarian longings and find ways that we can block that enactment so that a different kind of relating can happen where we can help the patient see how they take a one down position and where they invite others to disrespect them.
Yeah.
So it's a delicate dance to avoid that enactment and then gently help them see a different way of relating and gently see the pattern that is really destroying their relationships.
Mm. In your book, you describe very beautiful story of some woman which was a sex worker and she was addicted to drugs.
Hmm.
And when she claimed that something's wrong with me, you
Hmm.
replied, no, there is something healthy about you, and this is your sense of guilt. It's a very, very healthy. And is that kind of reframing, I mean, your therapeutical technique, reframing
Hmm.
uh, and some kind of transfer from
Hmm.
problem to resource?
Well, you can call it reframing, which sounds like kind of a trick. I honestly think of it as telling the truth.
Mhm.
Remember, in that story, this woman was out, she was using drugs,
Yeah.
and her former boyfriend, she asked, so while she was out on the streets working as a prostitute, she asked her former boyfriend to take care of her daughters, and he sexually abused one of the daughters. So she's felt terrible ever since, and she thought there's something wrong with me. And I was pointing out, no, this fact that you feel guilt about neglecting your daughter shows that you love her, that this guilt you feel is really the healthiest part of you. That's really the truth. The fact she could feel guilt about how her action hurt her daughter. That speaks to her love, her humanity. I mean, look, we can think of certain leaders and criminals who feel no guilt about hurting others, and that speaks to their inhumanity, right? And
Yeah.
so, although in the ways of the world, yeah, this woman would never be a famous person, and yet her ability to feel guilt, her wish to repair, and how she spent the rest of her life protecting children, helping her daughter, raising her granddaughter. I mean, what a beautiful, beautiful person. Far greater than some leaders we can think of today who feel no guilt and do terrible things. So I don't view it as simply a reframing. I think it's really telling the truth, but it's helping her see a truth that she hadn't been seeing. She was so blinded by her self-hatred that she was unable to see an essential truth about herself. Because a lot of times the lies we tell ourselves, like I'm a terrible person or I hate myself or whatever, chronic self-criticism, these defenses blind us. And so oftentimes patients come to us being blind, often to the best aspects of themselves.
Because very frequently we
Mhm,
think about sense of guilt like as
mhm.
something unbearable. That is something we don't want to feel because it's too heavy to feel, and we try to I don't know, rid of from us that sense to don't feel it. But in perspective, which you explain in your book, a
Mhm.
way to new healthy life, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, if we hurt someone, of course we feel guilt, and then that guilt mobilizes us to change our actions. It also mobilizes us to turn to that person and apologize, to repair the damage we did. It's essential to human relationships. So guilt is bearable. It's painful. It's humbling.
Yeah.
Wow, I was really a jerk. That really is a hard thing to swallow. Like, I'm not as great and holy a person as I thought. I really was terrible as a person. So that's hard to bear. The guilt's not hard to bear, but our elevated notions of ourselves, it's like it's hard on our narcissism. What can become unbearable, though, is that to avoid guilt, people oftentimes will then resort to self-punishment.
Yeah.
And then that becomes a chronic theme throughout their lives, and that really can be quite unbearable.
Mm. And when we talk about our daily feelings, about daily
Hmm.
emotions, mm, one of the most important questions is also self-acceptance. And in your book, it is also one of the main theme. And I'd like to ask you, do you think that it's something common that we base our self-worth on other people? We depend our self-worth from other people?
I think to a certain degree, and I don't view that as entirely unhealthy.
Mm.
Uh, Life is hard, and uh, and when faced with difficult conflicts and issues, we all of us depend on good friends to give us good feedback.
Yeah.
And to validate our worth when we struggle with a difficult situation. I'm sure if you're in a situation where you have to fire someone, there's someone you talk to, and they'll be able to empathize with your guilt. They'll be able to empathize with why you had to do it, and they'll help you hold on to a sense that you're a good person, even if you have to do an action that you know causes someone pain. So in that sense, all of us, all of us need validation from others. None of us is some narcissistic island that somehow is always stable. I think the issue is actually different. I think that the problem we get into is we tend, when people have self-esteem problems and they feel terrible, oftentimes they're having trouble accepting themselves as a flawed human, and they're holding themselves up to an inhuman ideal of perfection,
All
that
right,
they
but
somehow should be able to be more, do no more, or know more than what they can in this moment. So it's oftentimes they'll attribute those expectations to other people, but no, it's these are their own expectations, and they have trouble. I mean, all of us have trouble at moments accepting our humanity, that with the best of intentions, we are flawed, we make mistakes, we say foolish or stupid things at times that hurt others, and we're stumbling on our way to Bethlehem, you might say.
yeah.
And I think that's the real issue. It's our own excessive standards that we berate or misuse against ourselves, but we attribute it to other people.
But in your opinion, is it possible to feel unconditional self-acceptance? Because that is the construct in some therapeutical modalities, unconditional self-acceptance. Is that possible in our life at all?
I think the problem with that concept is that somehow it sounds like just an easy thing to do and you're just there. And so, like, just do it. None of us are able to just do it.
Mhm.
Every one of us can think of things about ourselves we struggle to accept. And in fact, psychotherapy is helping us accept feelings that are not so nice.
Mhm.
Accept guilt over things we did. Accepting if you divorce someone, like, yeah, your kids really suffered. Accepting, oh gosh, I've been very dismissive of my wife, right? It's like there's a lot of the little things of every day that we have trouble accepting. So it's really a process of continued increasing acceptance of oneself. Uh, I haven't reached that exalted state that you refer to. It must be nice, but I've never met anyone who also became perfected through therapy or anything else. And the people I met who claim to be perfect tend to be severely narcissistic individuals who are a bit deluded. So I think anytime we talk about complete self-acceptance, we're talking about some ideal state, about non-ideal humans. Hopefully, over time, we come to accept, our mistakes, our flaws, our shortcomings. But I think using myself as an example, I'm definitely a work in progress. So I just assume if I'm a work in progress and it's never been complete for me, I'm assuming it's probably that way for most of us. And I've never met a perfect person who's been purified or and everyone who I've met who thought they were had complete self-acceptance, all it took was someone to bump a sore spot and boom, we saw it.
So
So
it's more
I
dynamic, yeah. It's more dynamic.
Yes, and I think we have to give up a perfect, ideal, messianic ideals about us as humans. We've never met
Mhm.
a perfect person. Yeah.
When we talk about self-acceptance,
Mhm.
I think about the main character of chapter 4 of your
Mhm.
book, uh, the most moving and the most shocking for
Mhm.
me chapter. It's a story of a man who has ripped off a torturer, the man who has tortured him and who has raped his wife. Is it possible to feel self-acceptance after something like that? And secondly, how to interpret the title of that chapter? I mean, die before you die.
Yeah. Well, any ideal notion he had of himself died, right? Any ideal notion he had of himself died. And he had to accept, I do have the capacity to kill. I did. I do have the capacity to torture someone. I did. I do have the capacity to rape someone. I did.
Mm.
I mean, it's really deeply accepting all of that and all the guilt that comes with that and the tremendous grief. Uh, there are most people are not able to do that, and they end up being very disturbed. They're very troubled, right? We call it, for instance, we send men off to war and they come back having done just absolutely horrible things. And they need a really incredibly empathic therapist who helps them accept, yeah, they did all this and help them with the guilt. Um, so in that sense, it's a very deep acceptance and it's a very great humbling. It's like when you meet people who've really accepted this and have felt the guilt and the grief, there's there's a deep peace about them and there's a very deep humility.
Mm.
I mean, because they realize I am the last of the people who could judge anyone.
Mm.
I'm the last. Yeah.
So one more time, it is about feeling guilty, yeah? That feeling guilty can be
Yes.
way to rebirth, way to purify
Yeah. I don't
ourselves.
I don't know if it's not it's that
Not
we're never
purify.
purified. Yeah. This, like when someone feels this guilt, he feels guilt he can't undo. He can't undo. Symbolically, he'll work through his guilt, probably through generosity, through helping others, right? Through devoting his life to ending violence of different kinds. But yeah, it means living with it. It's not purified out of him, but it's helping him live with that. Yeah. And
Uh,
it's possible to live with, but yeah, it's really letting go of all denial. Yeah. Because denial is calling them heroes. And one way, yeah, they know that, but it doesn't feel like heroism knowing what they did. Yeah.
And in the final chapter, you share with readers very intimate story of your father's passing away. And I
Mhm.
wonder what kind of truth we can find in such existentially extreme experience.
Mhm. Mhm. What were you thinking of in particular?
What kind of truth about ourselves, or perhaps about our lifetime with our parents, our family at all, when we confront with death, and we have to say goodbye to our closest people. What kind of truth, what kind of lesson it is for us, like human beings?
Well, let me tell another story I don't think is in the book. So I grew up in a very violent home. And about a year before my father died, in front of the family, he said to me, I almost killed you a bunch of times.
Oh gosh.
And it's true. And that was his apology. And tears came to my eyes.
Mm,
I just thought, my God,
mm,
what courage it takes. What courage it takes. I mean, uh, it was true. And he said it. And he wanted me to know that he knew
mm,
and that he'd been carrying this his whole life. This is a terrible burden. He loved me, as an adult. He was very proud of what I'd done, but he had to live with this terrible knowledge,
mm.
you know. And I guess, for me, it was a gift, just an incredible gift, because he was letting me know it was his way of apologizing,
Mm.
which just meant the world. I was just tears came to my eyes. And at the same time, I came away with a sense of just tremendous admiration because it takes such courage. That's not an easy thing to apologize for. And to say it, it just, wow, just breathtaking courage. And knowing he was very old and knowing he wanted to make sure that was done
Mm.
before he died. It's just, wow. How do you put words to that? I don't know. I mean, I've said some words, but I'm sure as you listen, I mean, our words only can point to what we can't say, the unsayable in a moment like that. What do we learn? We talk to each other, we use words to say what we can quote learned, but a moment like that, our words only point to the sayable. And yet that the boundary of that is the unsayable. And yeah, uh,
It was a turning point in your life, a turning point when your father has admitted that he was aware what he has done.
I don't know if it was a turning point. I'd say it was a deepening point.
Okay.
A deepening point. Yeah.
It was therapeutical for you, some kind of
Oh, absolutely. I
therapy?
mean, I'd already forgiven him in my own
Yeah.
heart, which maybe he sensed that, which made it possible to say it. But it just, yeah, wow. And yes, we could call it therapeutic. I mean, we could come up with different words, but how do you Yeah. How do you, yeah. How do you put words to things like that? I don't know. And that really speaks to therapists. Is like we want to package things into words. And at a certain point, it's really when we get better as therapists, we're not trying to package the patient in a box and say it's this or that, but we use words that kind of point to what we can't say. And that helps patients realize, yeah, because your words are helping them kind of see who they are beyond the words too. That's something more that words can't capture.
My own students has asked me, and they, in fact, they said that I have to ask you, what is the source of your brave, of your bold in your therapeutical intervention? Where do you get it from?
Well, several things. My own psychotherapy, I had years of psychotherapy, and that helped me with anxiety and helped me face my fears about my own inner life and my fears about being honest with patients. Um, so that was very important. And then I had years of supervision
Mhm.
that helped me, and also my patients. Uh, my patients at times would see would be able to say something that I was hesitant to say, that they at times early on in my career had more courage than I did. And they were showing me the importance of really being more direct.
Mm.
I remember a very important moment in my development, because I came from a pretty pathological background. So I thought, oh, anything that come out of my mouth might hurt the patient. So I would read all these books, hoping, well, maybe I'll say, if I say something that this analyst said, well, that'll help the patient, right? So I said something to a patient one day, and he said, "Where'd you get that? Out of some book?" And I was thinking to myself, yep, you know. And that was a turning point.
Mm.
He was letting me know he didn't need me to sound like someone else.
Mm.
He didn't need me to be someone else. He just needed me to say what was happening in my words with my ability. He just needed a genuine relationship. And yeah, even though I was flawed, even though there was a lot I didn't know, even though I was a scaredy cat,
Mm.
he just needed me to be direct and honest with him.
Mm.
That was a really important moment. So, I learned it from being in therapy. I learned it from supervisors. My supervisors say, well, how come you didn't say this? And I'd be thinking to myself, well, because I was afraid to. And so I was really so many over a number of years in my development, constantly having to face my fear of saying things.
Mm.
And I think part of this that I might say to therapists is that, remember, when we grow up, we're socialized not to say things, right? Oh, that say, no, 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 you're not supposed to say to someone that they're fat, you know. No, you're not supposed to say this. And so as little children, we're learning the taboos of our family, and we're learning the taboos of good socialization. There's all kinds of things, all kinds of taboos that are involved in polite conversation and good socialization. And hopefully, as children, we're socialized to be polite in society. That's a really good thing.
Mhm.
But the problem is, in therapy, we're oftentimes having to say things that break social taboos. And so for beginning therapists, it it makes them anxious because they're actually having to break a social taboo that they learned early on. That being a good therapist does mean breaking taboos, saying to a patient something you were never supposed to say about your aunt or uncle. So, did you ever say, Dad, you notice how you're kind of detached and distant with us, and that's going to affect our relationship? And of course, they all laugh. And I said, right, of course you never said that to your father or mother, right? Because you were socialized not to comment on the defenses or relational strategies of your parents. And so now it feels totally taboo to undo those childhood taboos, to be able to speak honestly to patients about behaviors they're engaging in. That's a normal part of the development of all therapists, and hopefully supervisors can help students see those taboos at work and help them gain the courage to say the truth and also learn to deal with the feelings, because just because we tell the truth doesn't mean patients are going to be happy about it, but then to be able to deal with the reactions to the truth and the impact it has on our relationships as we struggle to talk about what one was never supposed to talk about.
So, at the end of our conversation, I'd like to ask you about your own inspirations when you were at the beginning of your way to become psychotherapist. I mean, what was in ISTDP, which was the most inspiring for you, and what still keeps you on that therapeutical way?
I remember the first time I was seeing, ISTDP. First of all, it was amazing because I was seeing videotapes of actual therapy, and that almost never happens in the psychotherapy world. So I was actually seeing what people were doing, and I had a chance to see a few cases where patients actually changed and where patients were facing feelings in a very deep way and changed by experience, and where they were spontaneously having insights, and where you could see that they were changing before your eyes. The way they were relating to people was changing, and that was just astonishing. And I just, yeah. And my first reaction was, I could never do this because I didn't understand it. I thought I could never do this, but I've got to learn how. Yeah. And so then, of course, I entered into supervision right away to, yeah, learn how to do that kind of therapy.
So it was kind of I don't know, rapid effectiveness.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I was seeing how therapists were able to form a closer connection with patients
Mhm.
much more rapidly, and where in their comfort in addressing patterns that would prevent people
Mhm.
from getting better, you know. And I was seeing, wow, there's a greater freedom, like a patient saying, well, I don't want to talk about that, and being able to free say, no, you're absolutely free not to talk about it, but let's just be clear, whatever you don't talk about, it is something we wouldn't be able to help you with. And then this therapy would be another therapy where we could make progress in that area. So just having the freedom to, in an empathic but matter-of-fact way, help patients see behaviors that were making therapy not work before, and giving them a chance to, yeah, have a different result.
And very, I guess, and very active role of psychotherapist. Yeah.
Yes, very
Uh,
active. It's funny. I presented one time in Oxford, and a woman was watching my videotape, and a psychiatrist said, Aren't you a bit manic?" Because I was quite active. And I said to her, isn't it funny that we're thinking the therapist's manic when we should be thinking that the patient's defenses are manic? Because as we look at a session, there's up to like between 5 and 9 defenses per minute that cause symptoms.
wow.
Yeah. So if you don't intervene for a couple of minutes and you let 10 self-attacks go by, the patient is actually becoming depressed during the session. So I said, it's not that we're manic, but we're trying to interrupt a manic defense process that is causing symptoms in the session. So the sooner we can interrupt that defensive process, then the sooner something different can unfold.
Wow. What a great recommendation for
Yeah,
all our students and
yeah,
future psychotherapists.
yeah.
Dr. Frederickson, thank you very much for very inspiring interview. It was a privilege, honor, and real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much for your gracious invitation.
Thank you so much and goodbye. Do
Bye-bye.
widzenia Państwu. Dziękujemy serdecznie. Do zobaczenia.